Hi guys, welcome back. So let's talk world rankings right down to getting into the algorithms, how they actually work. Now we like to give them a bit of flack, but are they actually a good measure? I'd love to know your comments below on how good teams are relative to each other. Now here is the world rankings up on the screen. We see South Africa retaining their first place spot after their exciting win versus New Zealand. And as we get into the autumn internationals, there's going to be opportunity for these teams to move around. Now, a few questions. At 6th, is a full strength France actually better than 6th? Well, maybe. Is Wales actually better than 9th, being the current Six Nations champion? Should that be taken into account? Maybe. And also you look down there, some other interesting things. Georgia ahead of Italy, for them that's quite exciting in their debate to be in the Six Nations. So subjectively there's some arguments that maybe they're not the best measure, but it's not done subjectively, it's done on the actual results, and we're going to get into how they get to those results and maybe how the world rankings are slightly better than maybe we think. Or not, it's all opinions at the end of the day as well. Now, are they actually important? Well, it's nice to know where teams rank relative to each other in terms of pride, but once every 4 years, it is really important when they're making that World Cup draw. There's a cut-off where if you're in the top 8, you get to be seeded, so only 2 seeds per pool, and then if you're below 8 in that dreaded 9th especially, then you're going to be in with 2 of the big dogs as such. And that was going to be Wales for the 2023 World Cup, but they did kind of backdate the rankings because of the pandemic, so actually Wales did make the rankings, and it was France, Scotland and Argentina that actually suffered. But anyway, I've done a video on the World Cup draw, and we will do more, I'm sure, as the year rolls on. So anyway, how does the rankings work? Let's have a look at it. So firstly, it's a point exchange. What one team gains, the other team loses. Points exchange, not just building up. The match result's important, of course. Win, loss or draw, you'd hope that would be in there, wouldn't you? Then, of course, we've got the relative strength. Now, this isn't necessarily the positions, it's the score, but of course that's going to be affects the positions, of course. But certainly, if you're a team that's much lower in the score, playing a team much higher in the score, you're capable of gaining more points. The margin of victory is important, but it's not just the more points you get, the more ranking points you get. There is a cut-off, 16 points or more for a win, and you get more of a modifier. It's a 0.15 modifier rather than a 0.1 modifier for a 15 points or less win. So there is a cut-off, it's not just a sliding scale. Home advantage is in there. Whether you think it should be or shouldn't be, that's an interesting one, but certainly the stats say the home team wins more often than not. So there is actually a +3 modifier, which you'll see when we come to the algorithm itself for a home team. If it's a neutral venue, then it doesn't count. And in a World Cup, you get double points for a World Cup, double weighting. Maybe that's right because it's the most important thing. It's the competition everyone builds towards. But for all other internationals, they're treated exactly the same. And maybe there's an argument a game in the Rugby Championship or the Six Nations should be worth slightly more or not. Let me know what you think. And then there's a number of formula variations based on all those criteria. Okay, so let's go through an actual example. Now, I'm going to use Wales because they're in that 9th spot. They could climb a little bit. And indeed, if they won all 3 of their kind of big games against New Zealand, Australia and South Africa, and they are playing all the big boys, so they have the biggest chance, they could actually climb up to 3rd. But let's just take one, for example, and that's going to be a win to Wales by whatever means, 26-10, and that gives them that 16 plus points advantage, so they get the maximum amount of points exchange. Okay, so here is the algorithm for that 16 plus point win. We can see Team B is New Zealand, Team A is Wales, and because it's 16 points or more, they get that times 0.15 modifier there. But the exchange is capped at 3, so you can't have a really high change in points. There is a limit. Indeed, a win against New Zealand in this scale would get quite close to that limit actually, so a pretty hefty points change there in Wales's favour. So let's go through it. Now here we go, there's the equation again. B, which is New Zealand, their ranking there at 90.97. A, which is Wales, that's a modified ranking, remember, because they're at home, they get +3 added, so they don't quite gain as many as if they were away. Okay, so if we plug those numbers with that home advantage modifier into the algorithm, it looks like that. If we do the brackets first, which of course we do, being good mathematicians, it comes to that. And then if we do that sum, then the point exchange is 2.6. So very close to that 3 cap which I mentioned. So let's do that point exchange. There it is, plus 2.6 to Wales onto their original ranking, minus 2.6 to New Zealand on their original ranking. And there are our new world rankings. You know, I'd like to say it's as simple as that. It's not massively simple, but it could have been a lot more complicated. That's how you calculate the world rankings, and the algorithms are available on Wikipedia and elsewhere. And there are some very clever spreadsheets, points calculators, ranking calculators you can use as well. But I thought I'd just do it there longhand to show you actually how it works. It's not necessarily just a closed book. And if they beat New Zealand by that 16-point margin or more, then they move from 9th to 7th. And if the cut-off for that World Cup draw was coming up, that would be an absolutely massive result. And indeed, I did this calculation if it was a World Cup game, and it would have shot Wales right up to 2nd. So that shows you the difference it makes if it's in a World Cup or not. Anyway, guys, that's how it works. I hope you found that interesting slightly, if you like maths or not. Calculators, like I said, available online. You can play around with them, see what effects any results would have in the Autumn Internationals on the rankings. So let me know what you think of the algorithm, of the world rankings. Is it now maybe slightly better than you originally thought? Should it be changed? Should there be new or different criteria? Should the weightings be changed, say, on the World Cup, for example? Anyway, love to know your thoughts, and until next time, I will catch you then.